You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me on socials at SamLittle44 and the podcast at Maple Footy Pod. And now there's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello. Yes, and welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. You already know what we are. We're the unofficial football podcast of the North. And today we are doing one of our weekly recaps as we tend to do on these Tuesdays. But first, if you have not yet, go ahead and listen to our Daniel Kruzten interview that dropped this past Friday. I think it's well worth the listen. You should definitely check it out. He has a great story. He seemed like a very good guy. And yeah, just really enjoyed talking with him. So I think if you like this podcast, you'll probably like that interview. But with that being said, we will kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this podcast here. So going to start off with the injury transfer news and other kind of news that we can't fit into the rest of the podcast. And then we'll, of course, move into all the amazing recaps that we do have for this last little week in Canadian football. But yeah, so starting out with the Vancouver Whitecaps, remember, hashtag SAVETHECAPS. I usually like that hashtag. But save the caps, and there's going to be a petition in the description that you can sign, and just whatever you can do to help make your voice heard that you don't want the Whitecaps to move on from Vancouver. I think it is well worth the literal 2 minutes that it takes to fill it out. I do think that you should check it out. And outside of that, there was kind of news that was kind of good, but then it was kind of debunked in a Whitecaps statement. There was essentially news of saying that potentially a new ownership group could be stepping up for Vancouver, for the Vancouver Whitecaps to keep them in Vancouver. But then the Whitecaps kind of released a statement essentially being like, hey, yeah, we're basically in the same spot that we were. We want to keep us in Vancouver, but any reports that are saying that, they're not really legit of a new ownership group coming. So hopefully maybe though this manifests into a new ownership group coming up and taking the Whitecaps and keeping them in Vancouver. I don't want to lose them to Las Vegas or anywhere that they may go. Keep them in Vancouver. They're called the Vancouver Whitecaps, so we can't really take them from Vancouver. But moving away from the Whitecaps, remember to sign the petition down below. Outside of that, out in Scotland, Ethan Schultz-Brown won the Kilmarnock Young Player of the Year. That's absolutely huge. I think he's had a breakout year for them. I think that he is a center back to watch on the horizon. We do have a lot of young center backs that I think are very exciting at the moment. Of course, Schultz-Brown. Then you have Luke DeFougerolles, Jamie Knight-Labelle, the two that have kind of really already started breaking through to the national team level. Then, of course, in DC, we got Markovic. So a lot of young Canadian center backs coming through. And I mean, Bombito's still only 26. So we do still have a pretty good young core of center backs on the rise. So that's really good. Really happy for him. I think he 100% deserves that. He had a great season out in Scotland. Outside of that, more transfer news here. This one kind of shocked me. TFC aren't signing Cifuentes on a permanent. The word on Twitter was kind of mixed between this, of some people were kind of okay with him leaving and some people couldn't understand it. I'm in the camp of, why are you doing this? Because I think in the couple months that he's played with TFC this season, I think he's looked very good. I think he's really helped be that engine in the midfield. I think him and Osorio worked really well together in that midfield duo that they were kind of playing. I just thought that he was quite good. So for them to not renew him, well, not sign him on a permanent, I should say, is kind of head-scratching to me. Now, I do understand there's a price cap, a salary cap in the MLS, so maybe that played a part, maybe just financials. Maybe he didn't want to stay. Maybe, who knows? We don't know all the behind-the-scenes working. All I know is that I kind of read that, and I was like, why? But anyways, it's up to TFC what they do and who they sign, who they don't sign. But yeah, this one I didn't fully understand. But maybe more reports will break in the next couple of days that will kind of explain it a bit further. I doubt it, but it could happen. Outside of that, Fabrizio Romano was tweeting that Bundesliga side Freiburg have Nathan Saliba, the best Saliba in world football, high on their list for the summer. He's, quote, one to watch very closely, with clubs in Italy and England also interested. Part of Canada squad at World Cup next month. Canada flag emoji. quoted from Fabrizio Romano. This is really exciting. I kind of always figured, and as I said on the podcast, Anderlecht did not feel like his career move. This did not feel like the final move for Nathan Saliba. I didn't expect rumors and murmurings to happen this quickly for Saliba, the best Saliba in world football. But regardless, we will take it. I think Freiburg would be an amazing transfer for him. And I know that he also said clubs in Italy and England. I'd be interested to see who those are. So we could weigh up the options like we have any say in it, but so that we could kind of see who else is interested in him just out of my own curiosity. But yeah, Freiburg, I think, would be an unreal landing spot for Nathan Saliba. So hoping that goes through, or one of the England and Italy clubs comes in for him as well. We will wait and see. But yeah, really excited for Saliba. I think that he's had a great season with Anderlecht, and this is 100% deserved if this does go through. So we will cross our fingers and toes that this one happens. So moving into some of the CPL results, well, all of the CPL results. On Wednesday of this past week, Forge FC in Hamilton hosted their annual school day match where they welcomed nearly 15,000 students from the city into the stadium for a game against FC Supra. The kids, unless they were super fans, would not be disappointed as Forge won this one 1-0. It was a very back and forth affair. Supra, of course, looking like a team that is quite exciting to watch and quite fun to watch. So no shock here that they were a little bit tough to beat for Forge, but it took a moment from Dan Nimick, who just decided to become prime Eden Hazard, run through the entire defense of Supra, pass the ball into the back of the net. It was a very nice goal, not one that you would expect from your center back, but one that they got from their center back nonetheless. Dan Nimick, of course, one of, in my opinion, the best players currently in the CPL. It'll be interesting to see what he can do for the rest of the season. Of course, last season he really, became the defender of the year quite literally. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can replicate that, go on and see what else he can do. Forge, of course, remaining undefeated at the moment. So that is also a big plus for the Hamiltonians. Moving into the weekend results, every single game was very, very close. Atletico Ottawa host and beat the Halifax Wanderers, building on that Toronto FC win from a couple of weeks ago. So that is really good for Atletico Ottawa. They need to get their regular season back on track, and maybe this is the beginning of that. I had said that when they had beaten TFC. Maybe now we see them kind of get their season on track. If this game against Halifax was anything to kind of go off of, then I guess they might be. For Halifax, though, they found themselves in a big rut at the moment. Of course, Vanni Sartini, I do think, can get them out of said rut. But yeah, they just are not looking great at the moment. I thought they started the season, they were looking quite good. And then these last number of games now have not looked up to it. But still a long season ahead, so still a lot of time to turn it around. And as I said, with a guy as good and as talented as Sartini, you would expect them to kind of turn this one around, but we will wait and see, because of course Halifax's goal is to get into the playoffs. They want to go on and win their first ever North Star Cup. Will they? Who knows? It'll be a very interesting story to follow throughout the rest of the season, though. Elsewhere, Inter Toronto went to Pacific and beat them 1-0 with a goal from Gonzalez. So another big win for Inter Toronto, who remain undefeated in the CPL season, and a much-needed victory after their disappointing loss in the Canadian Championship last weekend. So this was very much needed. I thought they looked more like that Inter Toronto that we kind of know and have come to expect under Mauro Estacchio this season. They kind of looked more up for this one, whereas last weekend in CanChamp, they really just didn't. For Pacific, though, this is, it's actually quite sad. Former champion of the league now, really struggling off the field in many aspects with a lot of bad deals and, people not living up to their ends of the bargains and whatnot. And then, of course, just on the field right now, things just are not working out for them. I'm actually a fan of James Merriman. I think he could have a bright future, but this season he's just not getting it right at the moment. It feels like there's been a lot of questionable decisions, questionable tactics displayed by Pacific. I do still think that they have a talented group of players, so I don't think that it's like, oh my gosh, these players are so bad. Like, no, I think that they actually have a very talented group of players. So just something's not working at the moment for Pacific. Maybe it's the outside noise, maybe it's the play style, who knows what it is, but it's just not meshing at the moment, which isn't good and it's not ideal. And they remain the bottom team in the CPL at the moment, which is a far cry from those number of years ago when they were consistent playoff contenders, consistently a team that you could kind of go, they might win this all, and have won it all in the past. So very interesting to see what they'll be doing for the remainder of the season, because I really do think that they need to change something up for them to get better results, really. Final game of the weekend, Vancouver FC hosted and lost to Cavalry 2-0. It was another Vancouver game that it just felt like they were really back and forth, really in it, but just once again could not convert their chances. And when you can't convert your chances, no matter how good you play, at some point, someone is going to catch you, and that has been the case for Vancouver. They play really well, but just can't convert their chances. And it catches you, especially against a team like Cavalry, as in form as Cavalry are, when they have players like a Tobias Warszewski, who's going to take the ball and just score. It's what he does. But I thought he's had a great season so far. Has Tobias Warszewski. Levi Lang comes on the 95th and then scores in the 97th minute to put the icing on the cake in the 2-0 victory. I still think Harry Payton's looking like one of the best midfielders in the league at the moment, and their defense is looking like one of the best defenses in the league, including their newest recruit in the back of the net is Nate Ingham. He's looking quite good as well. So yeah, for Vancouver, I still don't think they've played poorly this season. I just genuinely think they cannot convert their chances. And as I said, you come up against a team like Cavalry, they're going to make you pay when you don't convert your chances. So for Vancouver, I think they've had a lot of learning curves throughout these first number of games of the season. Maybe they'll be able to kind of change that. I do think that they have some talented attackers in their ranks, so we will see. And as for Cavalry, they still, for me, remain the team to watch this season. They look hungry and they look better than they have maybe ever, but they look really good this season. So I think it's going to be very interesting to watch that Cavalry and Forge dynamic this season. Going to be interesting to see how Ottawa and Inter Toronto kind of fare as the season goes on. Supra, of course, not one to count out. Halifax, Pacific, and Vancouver, all in different ways, need to kind of turn their seasons around at the moment. Whereas Vancouver are looking good, they can't score. Pacific just looking not great at the moment, and then Halifax finding themselves in a rut as well. So a lot of interesting storylines to kind of follow throughout the rest of the season in the CPL. Looking at the MLS results now, each team, except for TFC, played 2 games this past week. So we will talk about their midweek games first, then talk about their weekend game first. So we're going to start this off with LAFC losing 2-1 to St. Louis. Mathieu Choinière started this match. Estacio, Raposo, and Schaff all got on within the last 15 minutes. Their rut continues. At the moment, when I had written these notes, they were sitting 5th in the Western Conference. They have since actually moved down, but we'll talk about that a little bit after their next result. But yeah, LAFC finding themselves in quite the rut. And then elsewhere, Joel Waterman and Markovic both were unused subs for DC and Chicago in a 3-1 win for the Fire. So Joel Waterman's Chicago Fire winning that one. Sporting KC, this one was big, beat the LA Galaxy. Sporting KC have, of course, really struggled this season to get going, but beating LA Galaxy was a huge step up. Zorhan Basong, as you know, here at the Maple Footy podcast, we are the leader of the Zorhan Basong fan club. He grabbed himself his first start of the season, being deployed in the midfield as well, and he went about 61 minutes. So not really being used as a fullback as of recent for Sporting Kansas City. The few games that he has played this season as little cameo roles have come as a central midfielder. And then at the end of last season as well, they were kind of implementing him as a central midfielder there too. So it's going to be very interesting if he gets called to the World Cup, and I think that's an if he gets called to the World Cup. I think it's going to be interesting to see if Jesse Marsch were to use him as a versatile fullback or a versatile central midfielder. But just with the start that he's had to the season of injuries, I'm not super sure he's on Marsch's radar at the moment, but it's still definitely something to think about. You always need those Swiss Army knife kind of guys that can play a plethora of positions. In the second half of that one as well, Stephen Afrifa went the entire 45. Really happy to see Afrifa getting a lot more playing time this season than he did last season. Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy for the New York Red Bulls went the full 90 in a 3-2 win as 18-year-old American Julian Hall grabbed a hat trick, so that's pretty impressive. I mean, hats off to the boy. That's awesome. And then elsewhere, Inter Miami with a 5-3 win over Cincinnati midweek. Dane St. Clair makes 0 saves in that one. Not ideal. He had a much better showing on the weekend as well, so that's at least good. Got that chance to kind of rebound a little bit. But yeah, Dane St. Clair, not ideal. Faced 3 shots on target, 3 shots went in. Not a great ratio. Elsewhere, Orlando wins 4-3 versus Philly, and Maxime Crepeau makes 4 stops on the night, some big stops, especially at the end of that game, and that was kind of the case for the game on the weekend as well, which we will get into. Midweek, Jay Nelson sat out a 5-0 loss to San Jose with a minor knock, so not great, but he did feature for them over the weekend as well. Jane Nelson as well. It's kind of funny, the last couple of games that he's missed out for Austin through like a minor knock, they would lose 5-0. So just kind of interesting that he gets to evade these 5-0 losses, which is good for his CV, I suppose. Moving into some of the Canadian teams midweek here as I pull up the notes. Montreal and Portland Timbers went 2-2. Pantemis and Kamal start and looked very, very good in my opinion. Pantemis making 6 saves on the night. He might be looking like the most informed Canadian goalkeeper at the moment, and I'm not even sure he's going to be going to the World Cup. Montreal looked good as well in this one. I just once again think that when Montreal are clicking this season, they're clicking quite well. So this game against Portland, they looked pretty good. But yeah, the story here, James Pantemis, and he also had a very good showing over the weekend as well. But James Pantemis looking like potentially the most informed Canadian goalkeeper at the moment. I would still argue Maxime Crepeau's looking very good, but I might be a little bit biased towards the Canadian Buffon. But yeah, James Pantemis looking quite good. Midweek as well, the Vancouver Whitecaps win 3-2 over Dallas, where Berhalter grabbed himself a brace and brings him to 7 goals and 6 assists on the season. Very good news as well as Thomas Millar played the final 5 minutes in this one, which was very good. Of course, he wasn't injured last week. I want to correct myself from last week. He had an illness, which is why he was not anywhere to be seen in their match last week. But yeah, very good that Thomas Millar is back. The Vancouver Whitecaps sitting atop their conference, the Western Conference. So that is very good. Do not move the Whitecaps. Sign the petition down below. Now we will get into some of the weekend results. So over the weekend, DC drew St. Louis 1-1. Markovic of DC grabbed the final 15 in this one as DC snapped a last-minute equalizer as well. So Markovic getting in and out the lineup, which I think is kind of to be expected as he's a rookie in the league. So yeah, some games he plays a lot, some games he doesn't play at all, some games he plays somewhere in between that. And yeah, this was one of the games where it was an in-betweener, but really happy for Markovic. I think his development is coming along really nicely, and as we well know, he was the DC Player of the Month last month, so obviously he's doing something right, and they're liking him, so that is very good. For St. Louis, Kyle Hebert made the bench in this one. Still not sure what the situation is with Kyle Hebert, if he's carrying a knock, if he's fallen out of favor, because some games he's on the bench for St. Louis, some games he's playing for St. Louis 2 in the MLS, in MLS 2 essentially. So very interesting. I think it kind of sucks during a World Cup year to kind of be in the dark, and I'm not sure, as I said, what is going on, and I don't want to sit here and speculate a million different things, but regardless, all I know is he's been in and out the St. Louis matchday squads now and hasn't really even kicked a ball in the MLS so far this season, which I think is a big shame. But Lucas McNaughton was not on the bench in this one, so I'm wondering if there was a potential knock there for him. Once again, could not find anything, so I don't want to sit and speculate, but he wasn't on the bench, and that is out of character for Lucas McNaughton this season. He is featured in, I think, pretty much every St. Louis match so far this season outside of a handful, so it'll be interesting to see if that was a knock, what was up with that. But we'll move on to our next result. Shaquille Marshall-Ruddy once again went the full 90 for the New York Red Bulls in the New York Derby as they would draw 1-1. Orlando and Atlanta, I almost said Atalanta in the Serie A, crazy crossover. Orlando and Atlanta drew 1-1 as Kripo made some huge stops once again. And in my notes, are we even surprised anymore? Because no, we're not. He made some crucial stops towards the ends of both halves, which could have seen the results swing in Atlanta's favor. But no, he's just making so many saves at the moment. I know people will point to the fact, well, look at how many he's conceded. Look at the saves he is making. No goalkeeper at the moment in Canadian contention is making the saves that Maxime Kripo is making. And I know people will bring up James Pantemis looking really good, and he is, don't get me wrong, but I just think Maxime Kripo, truly, he just operates on a different level, in my opinion. I think he's got that difference maker element to him, and he was the difference maker on the day against Atlanta. Elsewhere, Sporting KC beats Austin 2-1. Zoran Basong started again, going 64 minutes, and once again was in the midfield. Good to see him start 2 in a row. Is it too little, too late? I'm not super sure, but regardless, really happy to see him start. Jaden Nelson came on in the 60th for Austin, but the story in this one was Stephen Afrifra, Canadian boy, Canadian winger, grabs the winner in the 82nd minute. Very happy for him. It was a very good finish, too. If you didn't see it, go check it out on Sporting KC's Instagram. He grabs the ball at the top of the box, essentially curls it in, top corner, off the bar. Beauty of a goal from the Canadian man. Then elsewhere, Jonathan Sirois made his Dallas debut in a 3-2 win where he made 6 saves, and one of them was a penalty when the game was still at 1-0. Not a bad way to make your debut. The story in this one as well was Sam Sarver shotgun to beer after scoring the winner, which is very funny. Sometimes you just gotta look and laugh. But it was a very funny celebration. But yeah, Jonathan Sirois, talk about really establishing yourself within your debut match. I'll be interested to see now if he's going to be used as their number 1 or if he's going to go back to being their number 2. But this was a very, very good debut. And I think it gives at least a Dallas coach something to think about maybe in between the sticks. But yeah, very happy that Jonathan Sirois finally made his debut, and it was quite the good debut as well. Elsewhere, James Pantemis had a huge performance despite a loss for Portland against Inter Miami 2-0. Dane Sinclair, once again, a quieter afternoon, made a couple of saves there as well. But James Pantemis, once again, I will reiterate, people are calling for him to be in this World Cup squad. I, on form, would genuinely 100% bring James Pantemis to this World Cup. But as I said in my prediction of Canadians' World Cup squad for this World Cup, I don't think we bring him because I don't think Jesse Marsch, 1, kind of really has him in the plans, and 2, Owen Goodman, I think, will be taking that third choice goalkeeper spot. Despite not having the best of seasons, I do think that Canada Soccer views Owen Goodman as the future between the sticks, or at least an integral part of the future in between those sticks. So I think that they'll want him to go to this World Cup to kind of gain that experience, that World Cup feel. So I would be happy to see James Pantemis go 100%, but I'm just not sure it's going to happen, even though he's making undeniably some amazing saves, and he made one of potentially the saves of the season on Lionel Messi in this one. Free kick curling right into the top corner. James Pantemis just claws it out of the literally last possible second. It's a great save. He's making some unbelievable saves, but I just don't think that James Pantemis sadly will find himself at the World Cup. I would be okay if I'm wrong about this because I actually really like James Pantemis and 100% think that he deserves to go, but I'm just kind of trying to think of it from he hasn't really been called up for Jesse Marsch pretty much ever. I think he's been called up once or twice, whereas Owen Goodman has been called up the last number of camps for Canada, has also has a younger side to him, I suppose. He is younger than James Pantemis, so I would say that once again, Canada Soccer might want to build to the future and might sadly come in the way of a James Pantemis, but if he goes, I will be happy and will not complain. There was an injury concern in this one as well, as my center back, my number 4, left this game with an apparent hamstring injury, but Matthew Shinetti has since said it's nothing serious. It doesn't look as serious as it appeared to be at first, which is good. I know that a lot of people are very hot or cold on Kamal Millar. if you're not going to go to the World Cup, I don't want it to be through an injury. I want it to be through, you know what, you had the chance, and for whatever reason, coach just didn't call you. You didn't fit into the plans, you didn't fit into this, you didn't fit into that. That is okay. I would hate to see any of our guys miss out on this World Cup because of injury, and I know that sounds ironic given the fact that we have so many guys that are injured at the moment, but you don't want to see guys miss out on the World Cup because of injury, miss out on the fact that, you know, you just didn't configure into the coach's plans. At least they had a shot to go. Injury takes away the shot to even go. But Kamal Millar, I'm still backing him, man. I'm still backing him. I want him at this World Cup. I don't care if you disagree with me on that. I think he needs to be there. He brings a lot of experience. I think he's had a decent season so far with Portland. So yes, bring Kamal Millar to the World Cup. Final game that isn't Canadian. LAFC continued their rut as they lost 3-2 to Nashville on Sunday night. Mukhtar of Nashville grabbed himself a hat trick. The story here, Thomas Hassel started in goal. Of course, he's a Canadian goalkeeper, made some saves in this one. And then Stefan Eustáquio went 88 minutes. Mathieu Chouanier also started the match as well. So we are seeing our Canadian guys, at least in this team, getting into the lineup and playing a little bit frequently, which is good, which is what you want in the world coming up to the World Cup. But yeah, LAFC have really found themselves in a weird little rut, which I don't think many would have expected come like even 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. But yeah, they've really not had a great run of results here, and it's not looking great for them. They've dropped from one of the top teams in their conference. They're now sitting 7th, just hovering in those playoff spots at the moment. Of course, still a long season to go. I'm not saying that. Sound the alarms. It's panic central for LAFC. But yeah, it just has not been a good number of weeks for LAFC. But I'm sure that with the talent they have, there should be no excuses as to why they can't turn this one around. Looking at the Canadian results over the weekend, CF Montreal lost 2-0 to Chicago in the Joel Waterman derby. But yeah, Montreal it was one of those games where Montreal looked decent but didn't look great. It was kind of the story of their season. They get a really good result in one game, go into the next game and get a poor result. So it's kind of the story of Montreal's season. If they could find that consistency, though, I do genuinely think that you could see them make it a playoff push. That's all I'm saying. They're still not far off of those playoff spots. They're just behind TFC in the table. TFC have since fallen out the playoff spots, but neither team is looking super off it at the moment, points-wise. And speaking of TFC, we will get into that one as they lost 3-1 to Charlotte with a plethora of injuries. So of 27 players on TFC, they are currently have 48% of that roster out injured. That is insane. That is crazy. I don't know what is happening right now, but yeah, 13 players out injured out of 27 is absurd, especially in a World Cup year. So I just don't know if TFC, kind of like Canada, have got the injury bug. It's crazy, and it has really affected TFC. And I'm not one to kind of look at injuries and go, that's the reason they've fallen off, because I do also believe in professional sports that injuries have to be expected. You have to account for injuries. But when you're getting half the roster injured, essentially, something's going wrong, something's not working, and on the field, it's taking its toll. You can see TFC were well in playoff spots just a couple weeks ago. All these injuries happen. TFC have now fallen out the playoff spots. I still hold true. TFC will be in the playoffs at the end of this season. I'm still sticking to that. But yeah, really concerning, I think, if you're a TFC fan with all the injuries. I do think the saving grace is they have one more match until the World Cup break. So all the guys that aren't going to the World Cup have about a month, basically, to get healthy. The guys that are at the World Cup, you hope, will stay healthy. But the actual game here, which is what we're supposed to be talking about, Sam, they lost 3-1 to Charlotte, but this is one of the worst refereeing performances I think I've ever seen in my life, in the MLS at least. TFC were getting robbed of calls. They were giving away easy calls. It was very absurd refereeing on the night. Robin Fraser kind of came out and had basically questioned the refereeing of like, what was that? Paraphrasing there. But yeah, very, very strange result for TFC, as 3-1 against Charlotte isn't ideal. But then you look at the refereeing performance and you look and you go, okay, what is going on right now? Is TFC just cursed at the moment? They may just be. But hopefully that curse will break come the end of the World Cup break. Wrapping up the MLS action here as the Vancouver Whitecaps lost on the weekend to the Houston Dynamo. They still sit top of the conference, Western Conference, in the MLS, but 10-man Vancouver could not see it out against the Dynamo. Last kick of the game, Houston wins this one. If you were wondering, Takaoka was the man sent off for a red card for the Vancouver Whitecaps. Isaac Boehmer came into this one. Canadian goalkeeper came in. But yeah, sadly for the Vancouver Whitecaps, could not see this one out against the Houston Dynamo. So with that being said, we will now move into some European results. So moving our way into European footy. We have Nathan Saliba, best Saliba in world football, as we kind of talked about at the start of the podcast. Of course, attracting interest from a lot of teams, it sounds like, but mainly Freiburg. He played the full 120 minutes in the Belgian Cup final, where they did sadly lose to Promise David-less Union. Tough break for Nathan Saliba and Anderlecht, going the full 2 hours in extra time and coming up short in that one. That one sucks, but Promise David on the bright side got to lift the trophy. Looked very happy, as he should, lifting the trophy. And he also grabbed himself 4 goals in 5 matches in this competition. So still, even though he couldn't play his part in the final, still played his part throughout the tournament. So really happy for Promise David. Will be interesting to see how that injury rehab is coming along, to see if he's going to be going to the World Cup or not. A lot of stuff has gone really quiet on that front, so I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he's progressing. But elsewhere in same place in Belgium, Nathan Saliba then over the weekend was man of the match in a 3-2 win for Anderlecht. Just once again, absolutely running the show in this one. Was dribbled past 0 times in this one. So just showing how good he is both going forward and coming back. He created a lot of chances in this one. He had like a pass completion of like 94 or something, like something absurd. So very, very good for Nathan Saliba. As I said at the start of this one, going to be very, very cool to see what he is going to do throughout this summer. Elsewhere in Belgium now, Luc de Fougeroux went off in the 62nd minute in the relegation playoff heartbreaker loss 3-2 to Lommel. Luc de Fougeroux did go off injured as well. Not good at all. Apparently, Matthew Shinetti, once again, is reporting that it is just a concussion with no deep concern of him potentially not getting back in time for the World Cup. So once again, time will tell, as concussions can be kind of weird. Hot take, concussions are weird, guys. But yeah, apparently, it's nothing to be super concerned about at the moment, apparently, so we will wait and see any following news that comes out on that. Elsewhere, in Spain now, Tejan Buchanan and Tani Oluwaseyi started and lost against Rayo. Villarreal, let's be real, they're kind of just playing out their fixtures at this moment in time. They've already qualified for Champions League, so the rest of these results now really, as bad as it sounds, they don't really matter. They've qualified for Champions League. They have nothing else to play for now. So, and you can kind of see that in their performances. It hasn't been the same Villarreal that we've kind of been seeing over the season, of like that exciting team that's really fun to watch. We haven't really seen that in these last couple games since they qualified for Champions League. But I guess when you have nothing to play for, it doesn't really matter all that much, but I mean, winning is still pretty nice. Elsewhere in Italy now, Jonathan David's Juventus lose to Fiorentina. UCL, as I had said last week, was in their hands. It is no longer in their hands after that result. Amazing. Not good at all for Juventus, because, well, when you don't have UCL in your hands, not great. Now, if they go out and win their next game, I think it's like 7 or 8-0, and Como wins, loses, or draws their game by like 1 goal, say they win it by 1 goal, I think then Juventus would pip the UCL spot, but they really have to hope for a Como loss and for them to win, essentially, to see them into the Champions League spots for next season. But it is looking like Juventus might be dropping to Europa League next season, but anything can happen. Final game of the season, so we will wait and see for Juventus. But yeah, very much a huge hit to their UCL hopes. Then in Italy, Ishmael Kone ran the show again against Lecce in a win versus Swallow because, of course, he ran the show. It's Ishmael Kone. 2026 Ishmael Kone is running the show against pretty much everyone, and I can't tell you how excited I am for the summer that Ishmael Kone is about to have between the World Cup, potential transfers, and everything in between. I think he's going to be very exciting to see what he can do. Very much excited for that. Then in Croatia, Nico Sigur was absent for Hedžić in their matchup. So this one is one to watch, I think. I have not seen any reports on a Sigur injury, but in their game last week, he went off in the 85th minute with an apparent knock, and now not being involved in their match this game. Not great, but hopefully it's nothing serious. Maybe that's just me speculating, but hopefully it's nothing crazy. As I said, I could not find any reports on it, so it could literally just me be going, oh, well, he left with a knock in the last game. He must be injured. Who knows? Hopefully it's nothing serious, and hopefully he is okay. But we will now move into two things I really want to devote some time to. And now, in what was one of the biggest stories, I think, in the footballing world this weekend, was Celtic won themselves another league title, beating Hearts on the final day to secure that trophy. And I will preface all this by saying I'm very happy for Alistair Johnston. We will always support our Canadian boys in the trophies that they may and will pick up. But this one was barred in a ton of controversy that had a lot of fans kind of sitting, scratching their head, going, So leading up to this match, Celtic were getting a lot of strange calls. They were getting some phantom penalty calls, especially against Motherwell, the penultimate game of the season. Celtic grabbed themselves a penalty in the 95th minute, a penalty that probably maybe shouldn't have stood, or shouldn't have been called, I should say. But regardless, they get the penalty converted to set up on the final day Hearts and Celtic, the two top teams in the league this season, winner take all essentially. And then Celtic during the game end up winning it by a score of 3-1. They get another penalty call, which I have now watched. It probably was a penalty, and people were also going on about the offside call. Once again, I think there is a case for the offside, but I don't think so. Player wasn't really involved in the play. He ended up scoring, but he wasn't involved in when he was offside, he wasn't involved in the play, I should say. And then my issue here is that then the Celtic supporters stormed the pitch after Celtic scored their final goal before the full-time whistle was blown. And the game was then thrown out, essentially, meaning that the game was abandoned, meaning that Celtic should have forfeited the match. Now, in any world, do I expect that Celtic would forfeit the game and lose the league title because of this? No, probably not. But then you look over Slavia Prague just about last week. Their supporters stormed the pitch before the game was done, looking like they had clinched the league title. League goes, nope, that's technically an abandonment of the game, meaning that your team forfeits 3-0, meaning that your team doesn't win the league. So it could happen, but now I don't see it happening now, given that the trophy presentation has already been done. Everything's already been kind of done and dusted. Now it's just, everybody has to talk about it now, and that's what we're doing. But I do just think that it is a shame that you don't see the underdog win this one. Hearts, of course, they had a very good season, and I think they have a case to be made that maybe they weren't given a fair shake leading up to the final game of the season. Maybe, the Scottish Premiership needs to really crack down, as I think a lot of these leagues, English Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, they all need to crack down on reffing and really, I think, nail down the rules of their leagues and these games, because there are a lot of strange calls going in favor of certain teams and a lot of calls going ways of other teams. So you kind of look and you go, it is a shame when the underdog doesn't get the fair shake. And this also isn't me saying, well, the underdog should always win because they're the underdog. That's not what I mean. I think that you should at least give them the fair shake. And I'm not super sure that Hearts were given a fair shake in this one. And I will say credit to Hearts supporters who, as Hearts had to leave the stadium, still fully in their kits, not showered, cleats still on, all that fun stuff. Hearts supporters essentially welcomed them back at their own home stadium and essentially gave them the guard of honor as these boys stepped off the bus, as they were this close to becoming the first Scottish team in 40 years, not named Celtic or Rangers, to win the Scottish Premiership. They were so close. And I think that's what's the most devastating part of it, is how close that they were. And I just, once again, think it's a shame that we see all these league titles, all these trophies decided, and there's always that thought in your head of, okay, but well, was it a fair game? Was it a fair this? Was it a fair that? And once again, credit to Celtic. I have absolutely nothing against them. I've, of course, been cheering on Celtic over the last number of years as they've had Alistair Johnston on the team. So, it's nothing against Celtic. I just think that you want to see titles titles won fairly, and I'm not super sure that has been the case, even away from Celtic. I'm not sure that's been the case in football for quite some time. And yes, it is a shame that Hearts did not win this one. But regardless, at least Alistair Johnston gets to lift the trophy at the end of the season, as he did. Then, of course, wrapping all this up, the EFL finals for the playoffs have been decided. The game will be Southampton and Hull, and this is the game that here at Maple Footy we wanted, as we have the conductor of the Kyle Larin hype train playing for Southampton, and the home of the Liam Millar Hive playing for Hull there. So I think it's going to be really fun to watch this one as a neutral. And yes, you cannot talk about this without mentioning Spygate that's going on between Southampton and the FA and Middlesbrough, I suppose, because Middlesbrough were the opponents of Southampton. Southampton beats Middlesbrough, but Southampton also maybe had a spy at the Middlesbrough training grounds throughout the week leading up to the playoff fixture. And yeah, there's pictures of it. You can literally Google it. There was a Southampton intern there. So I don't think the FA is gonna do what people are kind of calling for Southampton to be kicked out the final, to be kicked out the competition, to be to have Middlesbrough take their place, or a replay, or I don't even know what would happen. But regardless, I'm not sure that's gonna happen. I think the most that Southampton's gonna get is probably a fine, and maybe a points deduction going into next season, regardless of which league they're in, whether it be the Prem or whether it be the Championship again. I think that there might be a points deduction, which obviously is not ideal, but when you maybe you're sending spies to people's training, there could be repercussions to that, and Canada Soccer kind of knows all about that, looking back at the Summer Olympics all those couple of years ago. But we won't talk about that here. But yes, Kyle Larin moving away from the Spygate of it all, where yes, it is just, if it did happen, and it looks like it might have, and it did, Kyle Larin moving away from that. Very happy to see Kyle Larin play such an integral part in Southampton's final few games, final half of the season, really. He scored a lot, has played really well, has, I think, really made himself the guy that's going to be partnering Jonathan David during the World Cup. So I think that's going to be very interesting. And then on the flip side of this, you have Hull City, who I probably shouldn't show my bias here, but as you probably know, I'm a huge Liam Millar fan. We will be rooting for Hull City in this one because I want to see Liam Millar head up to the Premier League. And I just think that the Hull story is really, really great because last season they stayed up in the Championship via goal difference. Goal difference was their saving grace last season. They stayed up, then had a really great season until about the last month of the championship this time around. And then results really were not going their way towards the end of the season. But then on the final day of the season, they ended up getting into the playoff spots because results for Wrexham and Derby ended up going the way of Hull. Hull also winning their final game of the season. So everything kind of went their way on the final day of the season to ensure that they would be sixth. No team in sixth since 2010 has gone up to the Premier League from the Championship. So already backs a bit against the wall here for Hull. And then, of course, now they've beaten Millwall, who missed out on automatic promotion by 1 point. So they beat Millwall then to go to Wembley. I just think that the story of it all is really, really cool, and it's really fun. And I think as a neutral, trying to be a neutral, I think it would be really great to see Hull from all that from last season, through injuries that really hindered their season last season, some poor just form and ruts and all that stuff, to then come into this season, have a really great season, but then at the end of it look like, oh no, what are we going to do? And then it ends up working out for them on the final day. So it'd be really cool to see Hull there. And of course, as you well know, Maple Footy is the home of the Liam Millar Hive, so we would be absolutely ecstatic to see Liam Millar and Hull head up to the Premier League. I think that would be really awesome to see that, and it'll be very fun. I think it's going to be a very stressful game for the Liam Millar Hive in this one. But regardless, May 23rd is a date to mark on your calendars if you are a Canadian soccer fan, because it will be Southampton and Kyle Larin against Hull City and Liam Millar. I think it's going to be absolutely just great to see two Canadians playing at Wembley in one of the biggest games in English football. I think it's going to be so much fun. So really hoping that's a good game, and hoping, well, we're going to see at least one Canadian happy, but hopefully it'll be a good game at least, because sadly one Canadian's going to be very happy and one Canadian's going to be very disappointed. But regardless, we're going to be hoping for the best for all of our Canadians involved in this one. But outside of that, thank you so much for listening this far. Once again, check out that Daniel Kruzten interview if you have not just yet. Well worth the listen, in my humble opinion. Thank you so much for listening. If you have listened this far, this was quite the long one. We had a lot of games to cover, a lot of stories to talk about, but thank you so much for listening this far if you have. And with that being said, until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates. Remember to support Canadian football, be kind, and until next time, live, laugh, little.